I bet he's doing good.
What's going on? What's happening?
He said, "How's it going, dude?" And then he went quiet. So I said, "I bet he's doing good."
Oh, nah, I was just working on my song, messing with toms for the first time, trying to make it work, you
Tom.
know,
Like you mean drum
toms.
toms, right?
What?
Drum toms?
Yeah, well, not real ones, samples,
Yeah, like VSTs or whatever. I use
but
even Slate drums a lot for that kind of shit.
yeah, but Synthwave utilizes them a lot, and I'm like, I gotta do it.
Got to
So,
get the Phil Collins
but
effect.
yeah, but I mean, I didn't add too much. I just made like very, subtle, little fills here, tiny ones. But it makes the song like we were talking about Azeo, like the drums sounding more human and stuff.
Mhm.
It
Oh, for
makes it sound like, like there's more going on there. So I don't know. I'll send you the track later, but it's sounding
Good,
really good.
dude.
And
That's
then
awesome.
and then last night when I talked to Solstice, he had a lot of good advice about using certain plugins and like
fun.
you told me like automation and stuff. So I started doing that. This track sounds way more alive than it did the other day. So
Awesome, dude.
yeah, it's
See,
pretty.
that's why we made this channel, honestly.
Mhm.
Like we're trying to get people along. Like enough
Yeah,
of it. Shit. Let's get to making releases for a living, right? Like
yeah,
that's what it's about, bro. Fuck yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've been talking to everyone about just random stuff that I, had questions about, and I'm just implementing everything. I think I've grown a lot since I started
Like,
again.
okay,
So
so like part of it is like I know a lot of information, right? And I'm like, but there's people out there that know even more than me, right? So it's like for me
yeah,
to like talk about what I know about that and at least bust the lid off of all this shit and
yeah,
like, give you the buzzwords to go search once you're like alone and doing your own thing, right? You know what I mean? So I
yeah,
might know everything about a subject, but at least I can like give you the fucking way to get to that next step again, right? That's what
yeah,
I see it. Like, because sometimes I feel stupid too, right? Like I'm like, do I really know what I'm talking about? Like, right?
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's that it's working, man. Like just these slow steps, man, as we go, right?
I think once I start putting out these new songs, people are gonna look at the stuff that I've been releasing and be like, "Wow, he's improved a lot." So
That's
it's,
dope.
it's
It's
gonna
all
be
we can ask
sick.
for,
Yeah,
right?
it's gonna be sick. I can't wait. I got a couple more weeks. I need to take a break from releasing though. I got
Well,
my
you're
third
going.
one in a row. My third one in a row is next week on Friday. So um
I've been
after
itching
that,
to
You
get
save
crazy.
link, bro. I can keep hitting
yeah.
it.
Well, I gotta take some time because I gotta write some lyrics for another song I'm working on, and I gotta write like this story background for each of the tracks. So
That's dope.
yeah, I'm pretty ambitious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll go on ahead and get this thing started. I'll at least start recording.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
That
let me,
like creepy voice comes in. It's like you are now being recorded.
that's right. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna probably kill my video because I'm gonna might kind of avert my eyes for a second because I'm trying to help out Mike with the other stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll go for that. So I'm gonna go on ahead and let's hit stop video. I can't remember how to start recording.
You hit stop video to start recording.
Oh, it's a big button right here that says record.
There you go.
Yep. All right. So three, two, one.
Recording in progress.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. The
Oh,
creepy
it's like
voice.
it gives me a little button at the top. It's like okay or leave meeting. It's like, do you sure you want to be here? This shit's being recorded, bro.
I didn't know it gave you that option. That's funny.
So funny.
Perfect. Cool.
Anyways, welcome to the I don't know what you want to call it, the acoustics workshop.
Yeah, I've been calling it production chat or whatever the
Yeah,
topic is with Chris. But I
acoustics with Chris.
yeah, I like
Obviously, I
it.
have a whole bunch of acoustics around me right now in the image, so it's like you can't help but talk about it sometimes, right?
Yeah. No, I dig it. I think next up, like by next week, we need to have like a really good rhyming name for our kind of reoccurring chats here. Like we've
Ah,
already,
You can call it "What's this"
man,
with Chris.
yeah,
what's
Chris. I like that. That's pretty slick, actually.
Oh,
I already forced Mike's is mixing with Mike, and that's too easy. So
Yeah, that's on the nose.
yeah, can't miss that one. So
yeah, yeah.
well, good
Well,
stuff.
okay, so yeah, acoustics. So the overall goal of acoustics, what is the overall goal of acoustics? It's to hear the exact sound that the DAW's outputting without any kind of coloration in between it, right? And I mean, that goes from everything from the signal chain to the converters to everything, but they make a lot less of an impact on the signal chain than does, like, I mean, compared to the room itself, it's like probably 20%, 80% room, right?
Mhm,
If I were to switch out my interface from like the Focusrite one that I have to like an Audient one, you might see like a 2 to 5% difference in the actual sound change, right?
mhm,
And that's just like as a result of the different converter chips and things that are happening, but it's really minute compared to the drastic changes we can make in the room's actual like tonal quality and sound, right?
mhm.
So that includes the whole signal chain, even the cables and stuff connecting things. I actually have right now. It's funny that I talk about it in this speaker on the left side, which is right on. Is it left on the screen? I'm not even sure. But
It'd
it's
be
got
right for us, left for you.
yeah, it's got like a hum coming out of it right now, and I'm not sure if it's like cabling or like an amplifier channel or what, but I've just been dealing with it for the last bit. Like it's very faint, but it's there, right? So it matters for the sound quality of everything. It could be the wires going to the amp have a cord over top of it and it's getting noise through it, like anything right now. I got to investigate yet to figure it out, but part of the signal chain, right? And it's making a noise and now it's affecting everything I mix, right? It's not
Mhm,
in my mixes, but I hear it all the time while I'm mixing and it affects things, right? So then physically in the room, if you look around me, you'll see pretty much, I don't know if maybe I can move it a little bit, but there's like three panels this way, one on the door, and then another three panels that way, right? And it comes to symmetry a lot of the time for this stuff too, right? So like when I set up my the monitors, I actually did measurements from like the size of the space from the wall to the monitor on either side of the desk, and then setting it equidistant to the desk itself in the room, right? And then measuring the desk to make sure that the desk is in the right spot, right? And so there's a few rules to abide by when you set up a monitoring situation like this, like the 38% rule, which states that in order to get the best sound in a rectangular room, you put your monitors at 38% down the rectangle from the edge of the wall, right? So
mhm.
like if you want to percentize the room, like the direct center, you don't want to work in a square room if possible. Try and use a rectangle if you can, at minimum best, right? Just to when you get into talking about like we'll get into it a little more in a bit about room modes and stuff. There's the square is the absolute worst for like having reflections in most regions of the frequency spectrum. It's just fucking terrible. Don't do it. So like yeah, once we're talking about a rectangle, then the 38% rule, because now we've got a longer direction to go with, right? So 38% down the longer size of the rectangle, right? Oh, we got somebody new coming in. Bailey Howard. Welcome. We're talking acoustics right now and the 38% rule. And actually, while I'm on that part, so the monitor's being set up for translation stereo wise, right? So we can hear things left, hear things right, very well separated when we mix, right?
Mhm.
And going onward from that, it's also to do with a vocal triangle. So if you look, you can't see it, but like my monitors are exactly as far away from, if you draw like a line across the center of the tweeters there, it's exactly the same distance apart this way as I am this way away from it, creating a triangle to the actual
Oh
monitor,
yeah,
right? And it's an equidistant triangle set at 38% at the room, right? So
right.
that's like the minimum starting setup for any kind of studio space you want to set up. And you'll notice it in giant studios even. I wonder if I even have a picture of one maybe. Did I keep one? I don't think I have one of the big studio where my mastering engineer Rob actually owns. It's the same thing. He's got a Neve console, right? And it's
Mhm.
still set up where the monitoring solution, he's got soffit mounted ones way up on the walls that I use a lot because they're like loud. But the ones that are on the console are set at 38% into the room, regardless. It's crazy.
Nice.
Like we all follow these laws of physics. It's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
So then moving on, once you have this stuff set up, the very basics of where everything you're going to listen to comes from, right? There's kind of three areas of treatment that we want to look at in acoustics, split up into three kind of like frequency spectrums, if you will, right? So you have bass, which is the hardest thing in a small room to tame because there's so much pressure. You got to think of, like, I used to install car subs, right? And when you put a car sub in, you're dealing with amplifiers that are 350, 500 watts RMS, stuff like this to get the bass equal in loudness or like the little louder that we all like it compared to a 50-watt speaker system from your deck head unit, right? So like we're talking 3 to 5 times the amount of energy in order to get the same sound pressure level for bass, right? So then in a room this size, you get the effect of, if you're going to put a cap on that bass, when you make bass sound come out, well, how much fucking pressure does that have compared to a high frequency signal too, right? So we get into when you're in a tiny little room like this, guaranteed you already have way too much bass going on. It's just how it's going to be, right? Because you're putting a cap on something that you got to think a 20 hertz bass wave, I think, is something like 57 feet long. One cycle of it to go from positive to negative all the way, right? So you got to think this room's, I think, 13 feet long this way, right? How many times does that thing bounce, 20 hertz wave bounce in order to just complete a cycle, right? And then it overlaps on top of itself and gets, when you put a sound on top of itself, you know that in audio, it gets double as loud if it hits the same phase, right? Then we get this like crazy situation where bass frequencies are building up at different spots. So I'm talking all the way from like 20 to 500 hertz, right? Somewhere in that area. And we got these crazy dips happening because some of the waves are canceling out and other ones are like doubling, and like it makes for a crazy situation where you're not sure what the bass actually sounds like in these rooms, right? So using these specialized devices like diaphragmatic bass traps are pretty much the only solution that you can figure out for this. I wonder if I can get into some of the pictures that I have here of some of this stuff.
Yeah, those are really interesting. You were showing me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna put it up, but I'm gonna see if I can share it to you properly here. If I can get this damn thing to work again. Okay. Share the screen to this guy right here, okay? Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, sweet. I wonder if I can bring up multiple ones of them or not. So yeah, these are the bass boxes. And if you look at their design, so these are not the exact ones I don't think that I built, but I think I have a picture of those ones too. They're very similar to this. And they have
Internal like fire issue. If you just make your walls packed with carbon.
no, so this stuff, I don't know, like it's very inert the way that it, you know what's actually more of a danger is if it gets wet, it actually starts sucking oxygen out of the atmosphere.
Oh, really?
So like that's really the danger that you have. So it's like, don't get it. Like I've actually thought of like at times putting it a foot or two off the ground in my studio because I'm in a basement right here, right? But we're in like higher land, so it's not a big deal. It's not like it's gonna fucking flood or something. But I mean, a tragedy could happen, right? Like, don't even, let's not go there, you know? But yeah, actually, I can show you. This is funny as hell. If I go back here. So this is part of like making it. I'm gonna share this one too. If I can find it. This guy right here. So like you use green glue to put the backing and stuff together. So you're making like multiple layers of MDF to make it like as inert as you possibly can. This box is like just shit heavy, right? Like even I wish I could take the camera over there and show you, but there's like 2 layers on top, a 3/4 layer and another like 3/8 on top of that. And it's just fucking thick as shit, and then it's all sealed together so that it like the thing with bass is, remember how big it is, right? And how much energy it has. In order to stop that, you need something that can stand in the way of it too, right? So inertness matters to be able to stop bass. So the heavier that little fucker is, the more it's going to be able to stop. So they figured out using these materials designed this way is like the maximum amount of spring action you can get out of that front panel at like 40 hertz. And like these ones are tuned to be 40 hertz. So then you can get different thicknesses. I wonder if I can show you that next. So when we're talking about acoustic absorption, we have this. This guy right here. And it's defining different types of plywood thickness on the top here, these lines going down it, right? And then different sizes and frequencies that it will absorb based on how thick it is and how far the gap is behind it in a sealed enclosure, right? So it's got, I can actually like upload some of this later on to the server for you guys to look at properly. And it actually goes through that. I think this is from the book, The Art of Acoustics, if I'm not mistaken. I actually own the book somewhere in my house right here. So, but yeah, looking
luxurious
at that. So that's one of the things, and then a design. So we can look at the design of mine actually here. This is what it looks like when you put them together. Like, oh, I don't know if I just like love the screen or something like that. Can you guys see that now?
Yeah.
So actually, they've made a new design of this using like the special foam that they sell at Acoustic Fields, and that's what they make now. Mine's not designed that way. It's designed just with like I believe a half-inch face on the front of it. This one has a quarter-inch face plus another 3-inch face with like a sealed air gap between it. So it actually like has its own little spring on the front of a spring, if you will. And they figured out that that can actually absorb even more pressure into the box. What they're trying to do essentially is slow down bass. So like I talked about how like bass in this room, I'll just get out of this again for a sec so you can actually see me. Yeah, in this room, bass is going like this when it comes out of the speaker, right? And there's no way to stop it unless you have something like that to put in its way. And then what that's trying to do is slow down that fucking energy before it gets to the stuff that's sealed inside the back of there, sucking it up, right? Because you need to slow it down in pressure and like power levels so that you can actually do something with it, or else it goes right out the back of the box again. That's how it works. Like that's why you can hear outside of a club the bass frequencies, right? From like a kilometer away sometimes. It just leaks out. There's no way to stop it, right? It's massive, right? So then getting into like soundproof it of an acoustic space, what do we do? When we do like a control room, we go and build fucking cement walls around the outside of this, like a second wall on the outside of those walls, right? What have you effectively done then? You've even just put another cap on top of it, right? So you get even more pressure issues inside the space if you don't have it treated right for bass, right? And then we get into like, okay, so then room size matters, right? So actually, I'll bring this one up because it's funny as hell, actually. This right here. So they have what is the perfect room size, okay? And what we're looking at here is, so if you look at the number 23 feet long, and this is a rectangle, right? It's a 10-foot high ceiling. So the thing that we have in our regular houses here, so even mine subject to it, is your typical basement is 7.5 to 8 feet tall, right? In pretty much every room that you have. So that creates its own 500 to 700 hertz problem just in the room with the mode that's going to happen as a result of the size of it, right? So in order to get a lot of rid of those problems height-wise, they go to 10 feet tall. Yo, give me 1 sec, bro. The kid's screaming out here. Yo, guys, I'm on live stream. Chill. Quiet down. Sorry about that. Yo, they're just wiling out on like Minecraft outside the door right here. So, could you hear that?
Respect the grind.
So yeah, 10 feet high, right? That actually starts to get rid of a lot of those issues that you'd have at a mixed position in a room trying to get this thing proper right where we are, right? And then 17 feet wide, again, to get the walls away from you so that you get a time delay between these first reflections coming off your monitor. So you're really only hearing the real thing, and then a time delayed version of any bullshit coming back at you, right? And that's the real point of here. So then the 23 feet, what did I say? So a 20 hertz wave is how long? It's
20.
about 56, 57 feet.
Oh,
So if you look
yeah,
at that
57.
number right there, you got about 46 feet, right? And I would say go even a little higher so that the base wave will fit one cycle between the front and the back wall, right? And that's what we're trying to achieve is so that have you ever heard of the Bolt region in acoustics? It's actually like it's a graph of like room sizes, right? And it's like ratios of like 1 to 1 to 1 would be like a 10 by 10. It's a perfect square, right? And so then they have like these perfect ratios. So if you look at this ratio would be 2.3 to 1 to 1.7, right? If you look at those numbers that are actually on there. And so that they consider that within this Bolt region of excellence in studio design where some certain different formulas of ratios work better than others. And it's all about room mode. So I'm going to give you a freebie here today. I wonder if I can just go to it on here. There's a website that you can go to actually and calculate the room modes of any size, space, shape, design that you want, right? And it'll give you a spit out. I wonder if I can just share it again here. This it? Yeah, it's called the AMROC. There it is. Where'd it go, bro? just want to read it with you. There you go. Yeah, so here's the site. I'm not going to use it right in front of you, but this whole thing will allow you to calculate the different pressure values. And if you look on the right side here, you'll see they kind of put them in blue and red. So there's 3 different, actually got notes on this today. Hold on a second. So there's 3 different types of what they call room modes, okay? When it comes to acoustics, right? Oh, I didn't even finish getting through the rest of the other ones. So you have your bass treatment, right? And then you have broadband absorption, which are these panels over here, right? And they go all the way from, you're trying to get as low bass as you can all the way up to as high as you can into the spectrum of like high frequency. Because what you're trying to do is stop like the speaker bouncing right off the wall and into your ear in any kind of way, right? But you're not going to stop every frequency. Even with what I have on this, it stops up to like 12K. But like higher frequencies still bounce off it and right to my ear. So there's still problems that you just cannot get rid of, even with cloth, right? Like I'm talking waves that are like smaller than millimeters and shit, right? Like very high frequencies end up, you can't stop them. They just kind of come at you. So like then the desk design becomes a deal where like the angle of the actual stuff from the speaker to you matters, right? And then again, all the way that you build these little broadband panels around your room, right? So then you have this first reflection problem where it's going to bounce off the closest spot to you, even the roof above me here, right? And it's going to hit your ear before some of the content of the actual speaker or equal to the content of the speaker, right? With the distance of your room away from you and stuff, where you're going to cancel out frequencies, just like that sound pressure problem I was talking about, right? And then you're going to double some other frequencies, and that just skews what you hear right here at the mix position, right? So we're trying to put, when you see the design of the studio, you're going to see one right become off like a parallel axis of the front of the monitor right there. You'll see right against the wall, boom, it hits right into one of these panels, right? And the design of my panels, actually, I took it a step further because this room is tiny, right? And we were sitting there talking with a fucking professional that's done this for 20 years, and he's like, you can't get perfect in a tiny room. It's just impossible, right? With all the problems that are in there. So it's like, how do we increase what we're doing without taking up too much space, right? So the design of these, I wonder if you can see, or if I point right there, that one right there, right? There's a space behind it, right? So all of these also have a space behind them too, okay? And what you're creating actually is, so there's like 1, 2, 3 sets of, it's like compressed 1.5-inch insulation, right? And that stuff's capable of, when it's at one section thick, of stopping about 200 hertz of bass, right? And then you can get it down into like the 100, 125 hertz range by stacking it triple thick and then putting an air gap behind it so that even bigger waves can go in behind there and come back out a little bit and get reabsorbed by that again a little bit more. And you're increasing the effectiveness of your absorption at that rate. And actually, Azeo, I see the panels up behind you on your wall, right?
Well, let's not talk
My
about
acoustician sells something similar, but it's called like a closed cell foam, right? And
So-
they actually put it on these little adapters that bring it off the wall a little bit so that the whole panel is doubling what it can do, right?
Yeah,
Just a little tip for you if you ever want to try it out. I don't know. It'll definitely like double how much you have on the walls, right?
Yeah, this is more sound dampening than any sort of
It
like.
is. It's like you got to get into a lot more detail to do what I've done.
Oh yeah,
right?
this is like my home office, and I'm a renter, so unfortunately I can't build out a true studio just yet. But one day.
Yeah, I hope. Maybe I can be a part of it or something. That'd be dope.
That'd be killer, man. That'd be killer. Yeah.
Right?
I was sitting there laughing at myself inside because I was like, this room is about as square as they get.
Yeah, so you're probably just nothing but problems when it comes to like trying to hear stuff, right? Headphones probably work way better for you, right?
No,
In your situation.
I feel like headphones are an acquired taste, and I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah,
What?
I have to use headphones. My room
I
is
was saying
square
that-
as they come. I have windows. I have two. I have a closet that has 2 sides, and both sides have sliding mirror doors. Like, so this acoustically, this room is just shit. So I have to use headphones. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I could even do to like make it a little bit better. Nothing. Like, there's just.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
then I'm gonna actually talk into that next that is a perfect little segue as you say that, because I got a picture here. Here's the live room of Studio 2 at Fanshawe where I learned everything I know. Okay? Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
And so first thing you'll notice is the fucking size of the room.
And the
Okay?
shape.
Secondly, the shape of it. What is with all those random ass fucking corners and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then thirdly, how much stuff is on the walls, right?
Yeah.
So remember I was talking about that a magical room size thing, right? When you get into these larger sizes, and what they've done is they've taken a calculation of this entire space is like airspace, the volume of the actual air in the room, right? And that matters more so than the actual shape of it, the texture of it, anything else of it. It's the volume of the capsule that you're stuck in, right?
Yeah.
And then once you get it to it, once you can take the walls and get them out to a certain size, big enough, a lot of your problems just vanish that you used to have with things bouncing off of other things. And what they call it is a standing wave. Anytime where a sound bounces off a wall, comes back into wherever the source of that sound was and either cancels it out or hits it in some way. It's called a standing wave, right? And that can be happening at all 20,000 frequencies at one time and just be a fucking problem, right? So the design of these rooms is to try and first minimize it with the construction of the actual room itself, right? And you have to remember that entire, like, I think it's something like 30 feet across and it's all floated. That entire structure is floated off the ground in a capsule around it on the outside of it so nobody can hear it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the design that goes into that shit ahead of time, right? And actually, I got another picture of it. You can see in the middle of a design of one, okay? If I can get it up here again. Is this it? Yeah. If I can share it here. Here we go, right here. This is what it actually looks like in behind something when you try and build it out that way, right? And you'll see the finish on the bottom and then what it actually looks like behind it. And so, like, the amount of this design, this engineering that goes into the fucking wall structures of this stuff matters, right? And this is where I started talking about how the guy was able to build into the walls some of that base box treatment that I have, right? Where mine just sit on the floor in the middle of the room, but his are actually part of the wall, right? And it's at this stage where you add that in. And you can actually add diffusion into it and all kinds of different technologies that you're hiding, essentially. A lot of the the broadband absorption will go into walls like this, you'll see, right? And it's actually like wooden panels on the front there to actually liven up the room again after they've taken so much away. And all that gray in behind that room there is just like flat. Same thing I'm using inside my boxes, right? Like a compressed type insulation that's tuned to have the most absorption possible, right?
I didn't know that they would use the
Get into is like every room, after you've done your calculations with that little room calculator, the AMROC room calculator, right? It'll give you how many sabins of sucking up we need to do, I'll call it, right? The unit of measurement for like how much amount of treatment you would need on your walls in order to get rid of the most problems in a room that size, essentially. And they measure it in sabin units. That's what it's called, right? And so then it depends on the room size and the quantity of everything you're putting in and the type of materials you're using. So like people have used moving blankets, right? They hit a certain frequency spectrum, like insulation does another thing. Plywood resonates at a certain frequency, a really low one, but it does, right? So like then combining different technologies after you've done these calculations in order to get what you're looking for, right? The right absorption types based on that, right? And then the third final spot we're looking at is like the mid-range and high frequencies, right? Which is like particularly, we need to make a mixing room microscopic when it comes to that because that's where the vocal lies in, right? And all the important shit of a record, all that stuff is happening right there. And it's so sensitive to the ear, right? So we want to make the room as best as we can in that region. And that's where diffusion comes in, right? 1D diffusion on the back wall to get so what diffusion is actually doing is, instead of having a bounce come back. So when I first sat in this room, I used to mix without diffusion on the wall at the start, right? And I could hear a reverb back there, like another sound that's happening as a result of shit bouncing around back there, right? And then once you put them up, that's gone. It's like the wall's gone now. It's like you took one away without losing the energy that was total in the room still, right? So the key here is that it's going to take sounds at all the different frequencies and break them up, time delay certain ones so that they all come back into the room evenly and you don't hear it as a reverb. That's what it's actually doing, right? And you can actually go online and see the coolest fucking graphs of this. It's almost like an algorithmic picture of how it actually splays back out of the units. But it's kind of like this bubble pattern and it's really even as it comes back off of that panel back there, right? And then you tune that based on what problems you have pressure-wise in this room. And like this one, for example, is called a QRD 13, right? and it uses prime numbers to figure out how deep each little well should be as it's made. And the deeper you get, the lower frequency you can get, right? Then the wider you get these slats, the lower frequency you can have as well, but then the less high frequencies you can have, right? So you have like a trade-off type thing building these designs, right? So we figured out that a QRD 13 design using prime number 13, so that it would have 13 different pattern to it, like 13 different well sizes or whatever in the pattern, and that would absorb the most problems in this room for this design, right? And I mean, you're going to have to pay for your own calculations to get some of that stuff. But I mean, I can actually help with that in some of my masterclass stuff. It's very technical and like, we'll have to get bitter and like particular with numbers and shit. And it's hard. I don't got time for that right now, bro.
I'll have to take a rain check for you on that one,
But
man.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to get into like on my own channel where I can actually help people build rooms and stuff eventually, like I've done here. So like, it's totally possible, bro. Like all of this stuff is possible, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we did it here for really cheap, and we can do it again any other place, right? And so, like, the last thing I'll talk about is foam, real quick, right? We all know that it has effects. We don't know how many effects, right? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it suck? I use it right here. It's on my roof right above my head, actually. Okay? I don't hate it. I don't like it either, but I don't hate it. It's only good for the high frequencies. That's the key, right? Flutter, echoes, and things where you can hear the sound of it coming off of something in a direction. If you can hear it there, put some foam there, and it'll work. If you can't hear where it's coming from, the foam's not going to fucking help you. It's not directional enough. It doesn't have the ability to go low enough in the frequency spectrum where directionality isn't, right? So it's a kind of a cheater, if you want. If you can hear the sound and where it's coming from, foam will work to suppress it. If you can't, it's not going to because it can't hit those low frequencies. And I'm talking like 800 hertz and shit. It can't even absorb. It goes right through it and back out it again, right? Like 1K even. I doubt it probably even barely touches that, right? Like, so yeah. And then room modes. 3 types of room modes I talked about on that AMROC calculator real quick. So you have your room modes that are axial, AXIAL, axial. And that's from like the front to the back of the room, side to side, up to down, right?
Mhm.
And then you have tangential modes, which are triangular bounces. You got to think of it almost like an algorithm. So like sound would come off of there, then where would it go? It would go on there, then it would go, right? And then you get these complex things going on, but they're triangular and they create like a pattern. And that's what creates the sound pressure problem is the repeating of a pattern, right? So you get like the regular ass room modes where it's literally just the sound pressure from the size of these dimensions. Then you get problems where bounces cause tonality problems because they're building up because of the size of the room, right? And then you get this third thing called oblique, where it's just fucking random, where it's the things in your room and it's bouncing off of it. It could be any direction. And it's just a problem, right? And that's where like your first reflections and stuff like that are, right? Where it's like it's just literally coming off of something, hitting something, and right back to you again, right? So just, I mean, once you set a room up in this kind of situation, you've gotten rid of a lot of those problems to begin with, right? Even the design of the desk, having the angle of it, all that kind of stuff matters, but it's pretty much pre-designed into how we listen, right? So yeah, we'll stop sharing the phone.
I don't know if you probably maybe already heard about it.
What's
So
that?
obviously there's people like me who have shitty rooms that are built like ass and there's not much you can do about it. I don't have monitors, so I use headphones. I
Right.
was just looking at like different types of headphones, open, closed, stuff like that.
Yep.
I can't tell you. If you did some research, you probably could find it. I can't tell you what the name of it was, but there was one where there's an app or like some sort of software that comes with it, and basically it turns everything you hear to act like it's in like they have like different studios from across the world,
Yeah, it's
and it'll
Slate
sound like
VSX,
yeah, I think that's what it was.
virtual headphone system. It's like I'm
Yeah, I
trying
don't
to
know
think.
how
Yeah,
well they
virtual
work.
studio system or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how well they work, but for people who like
Dude,
me, I've thought
I
about
think
it.
I mentioned it in my last session there with the vocal mixing or whatever, right? Actually, I
Mhm.
know some mix engineers like the top end of the industry that use that solely now. It's pretty fucking terrible. But I would still, regardless, like I said, like you can use a lot of those models that I showed you in Sound ID
Mhm.
from Sonar Works, right? And it does a very similar thing, but Slate's taken it a step further where they're using AI and like human modeling, and they're able to like almost put you in the fucking room. It's the craziest shit. Where you have to train yourself to use these headphones before it sounds right to you, right?
Yeah.
And then once it does, it's like you're in that space instead of being in where you are. Like that's why they're on planes and stuff and thinking they're mixing, and it's like they leave the place they're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I highly suggest. I think I'm gonna probably buy them. They're about $750 Canadian. I think when I looked last at like along the Quade here, yeah. So like, I think they're cheaper in the States where he's from though. So I think $300-400, something like that. Which is like our dollar's shit. That's what it is, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, where were we? Standing waves, and then comparing control rooms to recording rooms. So I showed you that big room, right?
Yeah.
And so when we design like a control room, we design it with those room ratios intact, but then the goal with a live room is different than a goal with a mixing room, right? So like we get into talking about RT60, which is the reverb time. How long does a reverb tail go on for? It's called the RT60 measurement, right? And in a studio room, you're wanting that down to like 0.3 seconds, 0.25 seconds, right? Where there's really no tail on any reverbs that happen to any frequency. And you want that from 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz, right? And it's hard to achieve because now you've got like all these things, like the bass treatment. It's not so much for volume level as sustaining the note, right? Some of these notes, because of the room modes and the problems that are evident in the room, these sounds go on for like a second and a half as a resonance, right? And that's what you're actually hearing is the shitty sound quality of the room. It's just like a shitty reverb of your room, right? And so like the goal in a master control room is to get that down to like 0.25, 3 seconds, 0.3 seconds, right? 300 milliseconds, right? Yeah. And then we're talking like there's live rooms that go up to 1.5 seconds, stuff like that, and you get a reverb on purpose, right? And that's when they design the room with no standing waves, but then everything kind of comes back as a beautiful, lush reverb. And then that room gets known for being that type of recording room because of what it sounds like, right? So they still put all these like angles and shit in to correct the issues in the room. But then there's this beautiful reverb that's happening for a second also, right? So then it's like we tune them to be different things based on it, right? So then that's just the difference between the two. So like a live room ends up being a little more lively, and the reverbs go on for up to 1.5 seconds from that like 300 to 500 millisecond range, right? Where in a master control room, we're trying to get it as dry and real as possible so that we can hear the reverbs happening, right? Just a little different purpose for it, right? So then talking about sorry?
Hey, I'm going to have to drop off. I'm going to go help Mike get his stream set up, okay?
Oh, yeah, buddy. I'm just about done here. We should be able to fit it in the 7 minutes here, too, I think.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I'll talk about the Schroeder frequency next. So I talked about the 3 different levels of treatments that we do to the 3 different areas. So bass, mid-range, and high frequencies, right? Or bass, broadband, and mid-high frequencies as focus areas, right? So then you have what's called the Schroeder frequency of every room. And that is the frequency at which point sound starts to become pressure instead of audible frequency that can be absorbed. And that's when we get into things being needed like diffusion or bass treatment to suck it up as pressure devices, more so than using broadband and high frequency absorbers to get rid of it, right? So this room that we're in right here, I believe it has a Schroeder frequency of 223 hertz. So meaning I can suck up 223 hertz or above that easily with my broadband panels. Anything below that will be a son of a bitch because now it's pressure. Now it's going right through the panel and back out again, right? So now we need the technologies like these where it's literally taking like, so what happens, the longest wells inside of there, the sound has to bounce in it and back out of it, and the sound pressure then can dissipate. So the longer hallway it has to go down and back out is going to dissipate it more, right? So then that's where you get the depth of like your frequency range out of a diffuser unit from, right? So that's happening all the time. So we're trying to tame it in whatever ways possible, right? We're talking about carpeting, throw rugs, like other things that people have access to, because you're not going to have all of this stuff available to you at everybody, right? Like I probably paid $5,000 for all of this material, right? So like not everybody has all of this available. So what can we do to improve the acoustics of our rooms without getting into investment, right? So things like throw rugs, moving blankets, putting a carpet down on the ground. So I had a problem when I do vocals in this room. You'll see the mic back here, right? And I've got some special foam treatment above the mic as well, so it catches a few of the high frequencies that trying to bounce back into it. But then we have a carpet on the ground here. My late grandmother that I never even met, like, it got given to me through the family, so I keep it here. And honestly, it's probably, you take it away, you get like a crazy high frequency resonance in every vocal you record, right? So just get a throw rug if you want and try and see if you can soak up some of those, because that's all our goal is, right? Is trying to get back to that like perfect whatever goes in the mic comes back out the speaker, right? And it's all the stuff around us that's causing all the muddiness, right? So yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to do bass treatments without getting into spending money. I can show you actually, I think. Do I have a picture of it? No. Shit. But yeah, I had in the corners of my studios. Actually, it's at the back. Which way? This way, right now. Those. I actually use it as like just more absorption, broadband panels, right? But I thought it was bass treatment. I thought you could fill a corner with insulation and all your bass problems would go away, right? And I'll show you a little. I think I put it up maybe before. Here's a design of this guy right here. Just before we finish, here's a design of a corner version of a bass trap, right? And it's using a front face that does the same thing. It vibrates, right?
Yeah.
And that's going from like floor to ceiling type thing. So like you gotta understand that you're putting it in a box to absorb it, right? It's not just going to be the room absorbs magically. So this stuff doesn't really work for that, right? You have to put it in some kind of a structure that's going to be able to like oscillate and create something to actually suck up, right? So yeah, a lot of misconceptions that we've always had. So like just trying to get somewhere through doing these little lessons to like make it more obvious for people where to go next, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of the times it comes down to using headphones. It ends up, we're not going to invest in this. We're just going to get a set of these that work even better, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the technologies are finally there to do it. So
Yeah.
but yeah, there you go. That's the whole thing on acoustics, man.
That's interesting because someone who doesn't know anything about it, all they see is like what other people's rooms look like, and they're just like you said, they're like, oh yeah, if I just throw this piece of foam in the corner here,
Right, they have no fucking clue what they're talking about, right? Like, there's a
yeah,
lot more to the physics
but
of
like
it that needs to be addressed, right?
I mean, we all make our own kind of music, whether it's EDM or alternative rock or whatever. But no one thinks, you don't usually, I mean, there are people who do, like engineers and people like yourself, but no one thinks about frequencies and what they're actually doing when they're moving through a room.
Right, and the other thing is like nobody thinks what goes into making a sound sound so flat so that it sounds the same on a car speaker as it does to a headphone, as it does if I throw it in this room right here. It should sound the same as in the car, right?
Yeah.
If you give it to me, it should sound the same no matter where I listen to it, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. If you don't
Yeah.
put it into a place like this that's tuned properly, you end up with something that sounds different everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's the nature of the beast. It's all physics based. It's boring and dry and like
It's,
us
I
geek
mean,
people love it, but like everybody else is like, what the fuck are you talking
it's
about?
literally, well, it's science. It's actual science. It's not even
Yeah, and it's
like
perfect, right? So
figuratively.
when I got to building these things on the back, like I'm down to the nth degree, getting my inches perfectly so that that thing's gonna suck up the right frequency, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm off by a 16th of an inch, so is the frequency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's all about accuracy. It's all about physics, and physics doesn't lie. It's always the same, right? They're laws
Yeah.
for a reason. So yeah, that's acoustics, man. We try to get to the point where we can get back to the music and not have all this shit affect us, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the only part of music production that isn't like, oh, well, some people do this and some people do this. No, this is this
pretty
is a
standard
science.
across the
It's
board
pretty
when it comes to
standard. Like, there's
right,
measurements and all that you have to abide
right.
by. Like, you can't,
And then
there's
there's
no
a bunch
wiggle
of guys
room.
trying to throw out fluff at you so that you just get more confused as you're trying to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I ended up being lucky in finding that Dennis Fields guy who everybody calls crazy, by the way. But the guy
Yeah.
knows what he's talking about. I sat on a phone for $20 long distance with him for like 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And he taught me everything about sound pressure and how it all works properly. Like he's a physicist teacher, essentially. It was
Okay.
crazy. right? It had nothing to do with wood and sound frequencies. You know what I mean? He's talking about like how sound bounces based on shapes and sizes and shit. And I'm like, oh my God, like what? Really? Right? And that's why volume and stuff matters more and getting those ratios and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're done here. We're gonna go and do a mix with Mike over on the other channel here.
I'm gonna head over there right now.
Yeah, it's been a slice, bro. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers.
I'll see you next time.
Yeah, buddy.